Hello, everybody, and welcome to this free webinar. It's called Three Troubling Myths about 5G and electro-pollution and how you can protect yourself. My name is Nick Pinault, aka the EMF guy. I'm a best-selling EMF author. I'm an advocate for safe technologies, and I've been featured on around 100 offline and online media outlets where I've been spreading this message around 5G, around the topic of electro-pollution as a whole, and how health-conscious families and individuals can protect themselves.
Yeah, and hi, my name is Brian Hoyer. I'm an EMF mitigation specialist, and I'm the founder of Shielded Healing. And we're a growing, and I would say, I would like to think cutting edge EMF mitigation and shielding company that's serving North America mainly. I've also been spreading awareness around electro-pollution for several years and have been advising top functional medicine doctors on EMFs, some professional athletes, biohackers, health-minded people, and then people who consider themselves to be electro-hypersensitive. We also deal with a lot of those types of people. And then I also do consulting for many health and wellness companies to help make their products safer from EMF exposures.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so glad to have you with us tonight and to be a partner on this project, buddy. I'm really happy. So before we start, I'm going to ask you something that some people do. I think this audience is pretty advanced. Some people do a lot. Turn off your phone or at least put it in airplane mode. And obviously, I think it's important considering the nature of this topic. We also recommend watching this webinar from a wired connection instead of Wi-Fi in order to minimize your exposure to electro-pollution. And if you're not sure how to do that yet, well, don't worry. Don't go scrambling. Turn off your Wi-Fi and come back to this presentation. We're here to help you figure this stuff out. This is what we do. So important point, to keep things running smoothly, we'll take questions at the end of the presentation. So we'll be holding a 30-minute Q&A session after this presentation. And I think we might be able to stay a little bit longer if there's more questions. And I see we're going to buzz the 1,000 limit. So I think there's going to be a lot of questions. So please stay until the very end if you want your questions answered. Of course, with the number of people, we'll do our best to take as many questions as possible, but of course, please bear with us. It's going to be difficult to go through all of them. And finally, I want to mention that right under this presentation, you'll see a detailed description of a new EMF protection course that Brian and I have been working on for months, and I've launched this summer in a beta version with a small group. It's called Electro-Pollution Fix, and that's something that goes more in depth than we ever could during this presentation. It's completely optional. It's a cool project we're excited about, and we'll tell you about it a little bit at the end. But for now, we want to dive into this content, this free webinar. So I want to hear from you. Tell me in the chat, what have you heard about 5G this year? The 5G networks, the fifth generation of cellular networks. So was it positive? Was it negative? Was it neutral? I see dangerous, military weapon. Some say it was related to COVID, right? That's something super controversial. Someone said it's a big job creator, so that's positive, right? It can increase your connection speed. Someone said
I saw fry your nuts on there.
I was wondering if I could mention this, but that's all right. That's our style. We're very raw. So it's a little bit of some people say, well, it's going to provide something, but at the same time, I see causing infertility, cancer. So health effects, right? So it's interesting to see that there's both, and there's also surveillance. Some people say profit. That's a nice one. Yeah, profit. So it's a big business, right? So does it sound like you? I'm going to ask you a few statements and just reflect about this. Do any of these sound like you? You want to know the truth about 5G and other sources of EMFs or electro-pollution, and you want to know how to protect yourself and your family. And you've been doing your own research for a while, but you're still unsure what the risks are and how you can protect yourself. And maybe you see cancer, infertility, and all these things, but what is credible, what is not, what is a bit all over the top, what is realistic. And it's very difficult to decipher what's the credible research behind that. And also, you wish you could just know exactly how to protect yourself and stop worrying about EMFs. Do I get a yes? Yes, some people. So, you know, stop worrying is big, because I was in your shoes, and you're going to see both me and Brian are going to share a little bit of our stories, and maybe also in the questions at the end. But we've been in your shoes where it's unclear, it's frustrating, and it's also very scary, this entire topic. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page, because if you resonated with these statements, well, you'll want to stay on until the very end, because this is exactly what we'll share today during the webinar. So today, what you will learn during this webinar: first, how to stop worrying about 5G. And it doesn't mean ignore it, right? It's how to stop worrying. And because you'll learn what you can do about the sources of electropollution and how to move on with your life, know how to tackle this topic, and then still live a healthy life, right? Not with this constant worry that maybe you're doing the wrong thing. Because that's important, right? This ease of mind, feeling that you know exactly what the risks are. When you choose to use Wi-Fi or you choose to use your cell phone, you know what the risks are and you feel good about that. And you decide to expose yourself or not. And you also know how to protect your family. So you know exactly what to do to keep them safe and healthy. So this is what we want to achieve with you today in the short time we have together. So there's a couple of steps here in what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn what 5G is. And I know some people are already familiar with 5G, but we'll go back to the basics for the people here who maybe they're just starting their educational journey. And we'll bring everyone to the same level at the beginning. After that, we'll go into what 5G is not. And this is where we're going to share the top 3 myths. And these are 3 myths that we've identified together, and that a lot of even advanced EMF activists, health conscious individuals are getting wrong. And it's not that we want to show that we're smarter than them, but it's just that we want to go back to what the science says and what the engineering, the EMF mitigation side actually says about how to approach 5G. That's an important distinction. We're not here to be confrontational of other people's information, but to give you the truth as we know it. Are you being affected by electropollution? That's very important, because some people feel like they're affected by 5G or other sources, and we'll share some of the symptoms to look for in yourself or in a family member. That could be a tell sign that you are being overexposed to this electropollution. And step 4, we're going to talk about the top sources of electropollution inside your home. And that's how you can actually protect yourselves the science-based way, by reducing these sources. We'll help you get started on this lower EMF journey and show you how you can start minimizing your exposure to these stressful signals, making your home simply a healthiest place to live in overall. And before we move on, I need to include this legal tidbit, and I hate that part, to be honest, but nothing you'll learn inside this webinar should be considered as medical advice. Of course, yeah, everyone's saying that. We recommend seeking a well-dedicated functional medicine practitioner if you are suffering from any health issue that you think might or might not be related to electrosensitivity. I'm going to mention an organization. So take note of this. I'm not going to be able to take it to put it in the chat. It's called Physicians for Safe Technology. So if you are extremely electrosensitive, you're listening to this information and you want personal health advice, go to Physicians for Safe Technology. This is an organization who knows how to tackle this problem, because we're not here as medical professionals at the moment, and these people are. So you guys are ready? Let's get into the content. Take it away, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so I think the best thing to do would be to start by defining some terms to make sure that everybody's on the same page here, because there has been a lot of confusion about what is 5G. So 5G just means 5th generation of cellular networks. And it's different than the 5G network on your Wi-Fi router. And we get that question a lot. That's probably the number one question about 5G. When people pull it up on their computer, they see 5G. Hey, it's on my router. That's 5G. That's not the same. That just actually means 5 gigahertz. So 5G actually means 5th generation. And what's especially problematic about this 5th generation of wireless from an electropollution standpoint is that it requires the installation of hundreds of thousands of mobile phone antennas in the US alone. So images, they speak a lot louder than words. We like to make things very visual. So let me show you how the amount of electropollution we're all being exposed to has evolved over the last few decades. So this first map shows the amount of wireless pollution emitted by Wi-Fi routers and cell phone towers around the world. So what you're seeing right now is the version of the map dating back from 24 years ago in 1996, when the Macarena was the #1 song. So, and then Independence Day, that was the #1 movie, right? So if you can kind of think back to that time, and that was an unplanned thing that Nick didn't know about, but I had the Macarena tuned up.
I loved it.
So yeah, Macarena, Independence Day, just kind of take yourself in a time capsule back to that day and how nobody was really connected to their phones yet and glued to their phones all the time. But at that time, it was 2G. That means second generation of cellular networks. And that was being rolled out at that time. So wireless radiation pollution in the current cell phone frequency range was very rare in 1996, which is why this map, as you're looking at it, it shows us basically there's nothing. Maybe you can see a few little dots in some major cities where they had those old corded cell phones in the limousines, if you can remember that. But yeah, let's go ahead and move forward in time a little bit here. And 10 years later, in 2006, this is when 3G, the third generation of networks, were rolled out, and they were actually pretty well established at that time. So look at the amount of wireless pollution that's increased in just that short 10 years. So the yellow dots, they correspond to the highest amount of wireless pollution, while the purple correspond to lower amounts. And then let's keep moving forward. Okay, and let's see what happened once 4G, fourth generation, started to be installed everywhere. Okay, so this is in 2016, just 4 years later. So it's kind of like an exponential increase. We were 10 years, 24 years ago, 10 years. Now this is just 4 years ago.
That's another 10 years. That's just 4 years ago.
10. Okay, I got you. Okay, so 10 years, but it's just 4 years ago. That's
still a short time, right? For all this increase. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what you're seeing here is a combination of Wi-Fi hotspots, 2G, 3G, and 4G all combined to create a massive amount of wireless pollution. So in just 20 years, the amount we're exposed to has increased exponentially. And how much more wireless pollution do you think 5G is going to bring to the table? Well, in reality, we don't really know for sure. What we do know is that the telecom industry estimates that in order to fully roll out 5G, we need at least 800,000 new cell towers in the US alone, which is essentially going to double the number of towers that are currently installed. So that's a lot more concentration of these frequencies that are transmitting and blasting and penetrating our homes potentially and causing all of this electropollution, right? So I know a lot of people are concerned about these 5G towers being installed in their neighborhoods. And one of the great tools that you may have even heard of before is this antennasearch.com. And you can actually type in your address there, and it'll give you a vague idea of how many towers are installed near your home. And the reality is that most people live close enough to the cell phone towers for them to be making a difference and actually penetrating your home, causing some distress on your body. So there's 2G, 3G, 4G LTE, or 5G that are represented on this website. And also a quick note, the site also includes other types of transmitting antennas like radio and television transmissions, which we're going to talk about the importance of that a little bit later here. But to summarize, 5G is bad news on a health standpoint for a few reasons. The amount of wireless pollution we're already being exposed to is already too much, even with especially starting with 3G and 4G, right? And 5G is actually making this problem much worse if we're going to have twice as many antennas as we currently have or more. So 5G towers can often be very close to people's homes, and that's kind of what the industry is implementing around in the neighborhoods that I've tested all around the country. And the closer that a tower is, generally the more problematic it can be. The higher the field strength is, And we're going to talk a little bit about field strength too, and how maybe that matters, and maybe it doesn't matter as much, like how strong something is. But also real concerns about internet security, privacy, and lots of other issues that are a bit beyond the scope of this webinar, but it's still a really very real concern with 5G. So let's talk a little bit about what 5G is not, because currently 5G is clearly adding more exposures, and it looks bleak. And I think that it's important to be informed about the rollout of these new networks and how they might impact our health. However, Nick and I agree that a lot of what has been said this year about 5G and its possible health effects are not quite factually or scientifically accurate. Worse than that, in a lot of situations, people are so focused on the potential dangers of 5G that they ignore the very real dangers of other sources of electro-pollution. So keep in mind as we dive into this section that most people who share information about 5G and might have shared our so-called myths that we're going to dive into here, they're usually trying to sound the alarm and sharing from their best understanding, right? Most of these people, they want to do good. They're wanting to tell you the truth about 5G, but unfortunately, all the online controversy this year has led to a lot of confusion, speculation, and a distortion of a lot of the facts around it. And, you know, some of these things are also theories, and I think it's intriguing, but is there proof for that? That's a whole other question, right? So this current iteration of what we're talking about here, this is the truth as we know it. And our professional opinions based on years of research and my own experience in the field testing with equipment that measures all of these different frequency exposures from 2G to 5G. And then, you know, there are some experts that might have other opinions, and we respect that. But let's go ahead and dive into these myths. So myth number one, this myth is that 5G is all about millimeter waves. Okay, I hear that all the time, millimeter waves. And this has been circulating widely on the internet probably for the past 2 or 3 years, that 5G only consists of higher frequency millimeter waves. And some people know that it doesn't only consist of that, but they're really focused on that. And the millimeter waves, it's the type of waves that are similar to those used in the airport scanner where you raise your hand and it whirls around. You know, they're using that technology in there. But this is incorrect. It's not all about millimeter waves or only millimeter waves. So let's look at what frequencies these new 5G networks will actually emit. So this spectrum, EMF spectrum, what you're seeing here is the electromagnetic spectrum. So it ranges from very low frequencies on the left, such as the 50 or 60 hertz household electricity that's running in the walls of your home, to all the way to the right side, where you have the extremely high frequencies associated with X-rays or nuclear radiation. And 4G LTE, the generation of cell phone networks right before 5G, emits radiation in the range of roughly 400 megahertz all the way up to 6 gigahertz. And generally, that's like the main frequency range. Now, they also use what are called backhaul transmitters that go all the way up to actually nearly 24 gigahertz. And a lot of people don't know that about 4G, because millimeter waves start at 30 gigahertz, but they're using in 5G networks, they're using millimeter waves from 24 all the way up to, I think, 90 gigahertz, somewhere around there. So actually, with 4G, we went all the way up to 24 with those round drum transmitters that's transmitting like the backbone of the information from over hills and from valleys up the hill across the town and that sort of thing. Then when you see those big transmitters. Okay, and so 4G LTE, the generation of cell phone networks right before 5G, it emits that type of radiation. All right, and then on the other hand, we have 5G millimeter waves that a lot of people are concerned about. They emit radiation that's a much higher in frequency. That's approximately 24 gigahertz all the way up to 95 gigahertz is the correct one. Okay, so these frequencies generally vary in different countries and different telecom companies. Okay, so there's some companies like T-Mobile that are kind of steering away from a lot of millimeter waves. They're using them somewhat, but their backbone is 600 megahertz. So the reality is that the majority of the 5G antennas that I've measured in various US cities that are they're not currently using very many millimeter waves, or if at all, right now. So that's partially because most phones are not equipped to connect to these beams of millimeter waves yet. This will change with phones like maybe the latest iPhone 12, which are compatible with these millimeter waves. So instead, what the majority of 5G antennas are doing is they're using these lower frequencies that are similar to 2G, 3G, 4G, LTE frequencies. And these have been around for a while. So this is approximately between 600 megahertz and 7 gigahertz. And there's kind of a little bit of a silver lining. The good news, the silver lining, is that these lower 5G frequencies can be detected using simple consumer level EMF meters, such as the ESI-24, which is the model that we recommend in our course to our members. So there's a lot of different types of EMF meters that can actually measure these, and so that we can actually know our exposure, right?
They're on the very, very expensive end, however. But if we hear about these meters becoming more affordable, we'll let you know. But diving into myth, the millimeter wave detectors.
Millimeter wave meters are much more expensive. Yeah, it's made for industry.
They're difficult at the moment.
Yeah.
But the good news, again, as you alluded to, Brian, what's important to remember is that yes, 5G is a concern, but the reality is that as we're doing this webinar, October 29, 2020, we're yet to find large areas that are blasted with millimeter waves. And I thought previously that this would happen sooner, but the good news is that at the moment, they're not being rolled out, these millimeter waves, as frequently or as widely as we thought. And that's good. But that's a myth that 5G is just about that. It's also the lower frequencies. Myth number two, though, and this is very controversial among people who discuss these things, higher frequencies are more dangerous. And once again, that's an idea that has been circulated widely on the internet. A lot of people propose that 5G frequencies of around 60 gigahertz can lead to respiratory symptoms. And they talked about the resonant frequency of the oxygen molecule. There is data about that. That it could exacerbate or even cause the symptoms that have been associated with a very popular virus that everyone's talking about this year. That's about all I'll say about this. But what I'll say, and it's important to say that, yes, there are scientific concerns around these higher frequency millimeter waves. So, for example, it's a 2018 study, or it's a review by Dr. Cindy Russell, and she looked at what is the available science that we know for sure on millimeter waves. A lot of it is from Russia or from Eastern Europe, from the military, actually, I think starting in the 50s until the 90s or so. The Soviet Union has also done a lot of research on millimeter waves. And what she says is this: current radio frequency radiation wavelengths, and that's wireless radiation, right? We are exposed to appear to act as a toxin to biological systems. So yes, it is electro-pollution. It's a toxin that's in the air that should be considered just like smog, right? Just like air pollution. And she said this: public health regulations need to be updated to match appropriate independent science with the adoption of biologically based exposure standards prior to further deployment of 4G or 5G technology. And of course, this has not been done. When scientists sound the alarm, unfortunately, this world is bizarre, but this is not how it happens. 5G is being rolled out regardless of the fact that there's zero studies looking at exactly the effects of real 5G antennas, the way they're used in the population. No study in animals, no study in humans. So let me return to the EMF spectrum for a second. Yes, there are scientific indications that millimeter waves can lead to biological effects, but the EMF science is also very clear that multiple types of man-made electropollution in the lower frequencies, such as household electricity, can also lead to health effects, right? So if higher frequencies were always more dangerous, Well, it means that the visible light itself would be an extreme danger to your health, and that's not the case, obviously. So while 5G probably won't go higher than 95 gigahertz, you see where it's at in the chart. Visible light, and that's something, I mean, I got to give you credit for that, Brian. You opened my eyes to this fact. Visible light ranges from, and just take a dramatic pause here, 375,000 to 769,000 gigahertz compared to 5G that doesn't go higher than 95. So we're talking about 400,000 gigahertz compared to 95 gigahertz. So the conclusion is that when you think about the dangers of electropollution, what matters most is not just the frequency, right? But how artificial the signal is. So some examples of very artificial and stressful types of electropollution, they include cell phone towers, and that's all the Gs, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever the frequency that's used, but also Wi-Fi, right? That it gets lost in translation a little bit. It gets lost in that debate, 5G, not 5G, what's more dangerous? But Wi-Fi is so used, so prevalent in everybody's home. Sometimes people have it very close to their body, and it is just as much as a concern to me and to people who study that stuff compared to 5G. That's the reality. And even common household electricity in certain situations. So before Brian jumps to myth number 3, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the worst source of electropollution? So is it Wi-Fi? Is it a tablet? Is it a phone? Is it a Bluetooth headphones? Is it a cell phone tower? Is it 5G, 4G, a smart meter, satellites, shoot away? What do you think? Anne says phone. Marjorie says Wi-Fi router. Oh, Sandy says refrigerator, magnetic field. Interesting.
Dirty electricity, somebody said.
Dirty electricity. Anything you're constantly receiving. Tammy, very, very smart. So, Brian, how close are these people to the truth?
Well, I would say it all could be true for them.
Yeah,
or for somebody else. Because every situation, every environment, every artificial environment that we create is different. It's dynamic. It changes. There could be something really bad for one person and really high in their home that's a lot lower in someone else's home, and there's a stressor somewhere else that's actually higher on the spectrum. So each person's, just like each person has an individual body, is very bio-individual, your homes each have different varying exposures in the different ranges of the frequency of that electromagnetic spectrum that we keep showing on there, from the low frequency to the high frequency. And then someone else in the chats talked about how artificial light that's modulated is bad, and so we're looking at modulation, spectrum, all of these things. So this is so important to understand this, that it's not just the higher frequencies that are means it's better or worse. It's whether it's natural or unnatural. And then myth number 3 is that wireless radiation is the worst source of electropollution. And so
from cell towers especially.
So a lot of people say that from cell towers it's the worst source. Now, once again, the information that's published about 5G has led a lot of people to worrying over the installation of these new cell phone towers in their neighborhoods, and also the Internet of Things, connectivity between devices, so everything has a Wi-Fi signal. And I'm very concerned about all of these things as well. But in the reality of things, when I go into someone's home, in my experience, taking these professional EMF readings with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment for, I'm going into their homes, and, I've been into over 1,000 homes and families across North America now. There's a wide range of different sources of electropollution that can make people feel unwell or make an impact on human performance. And in some cases, it makes the most electrosensitive of us experience a wide range of symptoms, which we'll list in just a few minutes. But like, I had someone just last year, and I'm going to throw this in here and go off script, that they called me because they had a 5G tower installed on their house. And it was right in front, not on their house. It was like right in front of the pole, right in front of their house. It was like just so obvious. And I went there and I tested it, and it didn't seem like it was on. I had the right equipment. I was testing. It was emitting a little bit of something. But the thing that was much more concerning was that my Gauss meter that's measuring magnetic fields was going like the whole time that I was there. And I got lucky because I ended up being able to fix that while I was on the assessment, because I was able to detect and figure that out. And he, after we were done, he's like, wow, you know what, it seems like this magnetic field was much more of a concern than that tower that's just sitting there staring me at the face. I was like, yeah, I know. And we never would have figured that out unless I came here and turned on all my equipment and saw that, because it was astronomically high. There was a really bad wiring error in that house. So, in like, there's many types, all that to say, there's many types of electropollution. And so you have, when we go out there, me and my team, when we're going out to test a customer's homes, these exposures can create a scenario where the person's stress bucket overflows, all of these different types of exposures, and the body's overwhelmed with stimulation from these external sources, and it produces symptoms. So there's actually 5 main man-made electropollution stressors that we test for. And they are artificial light, magnetic fields, electric fields, dirty electricity, and wireless radiation. Those are the 5 main things that we test for. And there's a few other natural stressors that we do test for, but to keep things simple, let's just say that these 5 different types of electropollution can all be equally bad depending on the situation. So cell phone towers, even 5G towers, are just one source of one type of electropollution called wireless radiation. And I've seen families with health problems that were clearly linked with Wi-Fi routers, such as the one you see on the left, and other individuals who had very elevated levels of magnetic fields from power lines that are penetrating into the home. So each situation is different. Each home is different. Each person is exposed to different amounts of electropollution depending on the environment that they're in at home or work. And sometimes cell towers are a huge issue for certain families and certain locations, but in other situations, they represent a quite small problem compared to other types of electropollution that we detect in the home, like that person I was telling you about who had the 5G tower in their front yard. So here's a really interesting quote and story about Dr. Martin Pall, about some of his research. So Dr. Martin Pall, he's from the Washington State University, and he's recognized as a very important EMF scientist who's been trying to identify exactly why electropollution is stressful to the human body. So he's actually identified that different sources of electropollution disrupt channels at the surface of your cells called the voltage-gated calcium channels, and that's abbreviated VGCCs. So this electropollution hits those VGCCs, and this is the main mechanism that causes stress on the cell level. But what is especially important is that Paul has found that both extremely low frequency fields, including the 50, 60 hertz cycle exposures, and the microwave EMF range exposures act via this same mechanism with the VGCCs. And so do static electric fields and static magnetic fields, and these little, even down to like the little nanosecond pulses. So in plain English, the stress response caused by electropollution happens when your cells are exposed to microwave frequencies from 4G or Wi-Fi or 5G millimeter waves, but also when they're exposed to extremely low frequencies like the electric fields or magnetic fields found in every single one of our homes whenever we plug something in or run a motor, or maybe there's a wiring issue in the house, or you're just sitting next to your computer with your laptop. It's all around you. So these have just as much of an effect in most circumstances that I've tested. So this is why your health strategy when it comes to electropollution should be to reduce your cumulative overall exposure, and not just keeping anxious about the cell phone towers, whether it's 5G or 4G or whatever. It's this more holistic picture. We step back, we look at it from this big perspective on how to reduce all of this, not just worried about the wireless radiation.
Yeah, and Brian, this is great. I want to know, you guys, do you think this information is useful? Are you liking this presentation? I know it gets technicals, a little bit technical sometimes, but do you like these principles, how to understand electropollution? And is it giving you a feeling that you're starting to get it a little bit better? It's not just the cell phone. What is worse, the cell phone or the Wi-Fi or the tablet? It is all of these sources are problematic because they are artificial, and the cumulative load, your load of electropollution matters, right? Imagine, I like to also add this. I'm going off script here, but I think it's a good comparison. Imagine how many different pollutants is there in the air.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I go outside, maybe I have lead in there, maybe I have arsenic, maybe I have different type of gasoline, kerosene. I don't know exactly, to be honest. Maybe it's 1,000 different types of toxins, but all of those contribute to bad air, and we know that it contributes to, I mean, it's millions of people who die because of smog per every year, especially in very large cities that have huge problems with that. So it's not like you want to focus on just the arsenic that's in the air or just the gasoline. It's all of them if you want to clear your air environment. So EMFs, in some sense, is like that, where it's the cumulative, all these exposures load. It's a toxic overload. Exactly, Karen. So it is a toxic overload. It's really the big principle that want to bring to the table. That's a little bit different from what a lot of people are saying. And our main point is not, again, it's not that 5G is not important. God, I think about 5G every day in my research. I hate the fact that it's being rolled out. I'm trying to finance the right activism work and research to stop 5G. I want to stop 5G. I'm thinking about the satellites. I know some people have been writing it in the chat box. What about satellites? It's equally bad. It's even worse in a sense because it's global exposure that's going to lead to. It's all bad, right? It's all bad. It's not just 5G. And even if we scrap 5G, we're left with what? A lot of electropollution. You saw the map with 4G, right? So let's get into, are you feeling the impacts? And I think it's important to address the symptoms that could be related to electropollution, because this year I saw a lot of people ask me, or ask in a lot of comments, right, on the internet, am I affected by the 5G towers? I think I'm fatigued. I think I have this, I have that. And it's, let's face it, when you see either a large tower or even the smaller ones, it's not a pretty thing. And a lot of people feel anxious when they see those towers. And in a sense, rightfully so, because you don't know if you're being exposed. And if you believe health agencies like the FCC, well, they would tell you, no, there's no way these cell towers can lead to any health effects, right? But this information from health agencies is completely outdated and does not reflect the current independent science at all. In fact, there's hundreds of independent scientists, literally, it's over 250, that have signed appeals saying, guys, we're completely off base with our safety guidelines. They're not safe at all. So the reality is that these independent scientists say that our large fraction of the population, possibly you included and me included, is already feeling the negative impacts of electropollution. Let's take this from Dr. Magda Havas. She's from Trent University in Canada. 3% of the population have severe symptoms, and 35% of the population have mild to moderate symptoms from electropollution. Well, that's huge. Imagine 35% of the entire population in, well, I guess in the Western countries that are very, like, largely exposed. That's a lot of people. If we have 1,000 people on, that's what, 333 people that have mild to moderate symptoms. Moderate is bad enough, but that's then 30 people out of 1,000 could have severe symptoms, so have downright bad health, because a causality here, because of electropollution. And she said that quote before 5G. So that's the important thing. That's the reason our message today is to say, well, even if we eliminate 5G, that would be good, but that would not be enough, because all the research that Magda Havas has done, and she's been looking, someone is asking me, how did she figure it out? It's based on symptom studies from several countries and her personal work with electro-hypersensitive people. And she could tell it better than I do. It's based also on cell phone proximity studies. Brian?
Yeah, it's like gathering epidemiological data with doctors around the world and seeing trends.
Yeah, exactly. So it's her scientific opinions. Other scientists would have other opinions, but she's one of the leading experts in looking at hypersensitivity. And she's, in fact, she's even helped firefighters in Ontario who were getting sick because of installation of a cell phone tower on top of their fire station win their case and prove with causality in front of a judge that these firefighters are young men in great shape and they're getting sick because they're doing their exercises on the roof right next to a large 4G tower. Imagine the proximity to this. And they were exposed to all this, and also flame retardants and all the toxins. So that's huge. So for those of you who don't think or are not feeling like you have the effects of electropollution, well, keep in mind that regardless of the symptoms, you still can get impacts in the long run. The worst recognized long-term effects being brain cancers in those who talk on phone for several hours every day. And if you're listening to this, that's probably not your habit, but just making sure. It's definitely not something you want to do. So looking at the symptoms, and this is the sources for this should have added it, the European Academy for Environmental Medicine, but also several researchers and doctors who treat electrohypersensitivity. So some of the top symptoms that have been identified as related to electropollution. So sometimes you could say that electropollution causes it, but again, it's a little bit simplistic. It's oftentimes electropollution can exacerbate, can keep you symptomatic, and it's part of everything that is a stressor to your body. So it's a little bit simplistic to say this is caused by one agent. And this is the modern view of medicine that is a little bit skewed according to our opinion. So you have fatigue, weakness, you have sleep disturbance or insomnia, you have headaches, very, very common these days, brain fog, depression or anxiety, and then you have memory loss or even early onset dementia. You have visual disruption or sensitivity to light, especially certain types of bulbs. For example, compact fluorescent light bulbs are especially a problem for people with electrohypersensitivity. Skin problems, even some people get skin rashes when exposed to Wi-Fi. And that's not a joke. And that's not something when you see it in people who have literally a topical reaction to this allergen, to this toxin. Well, it makes you think about the fact that after all, it might be real. Because now you see it, right? It's not just in the head. Heart palpitations is also very, very common symptoms in people who are very sensitive. And it's true that many of these symptoms are similar to those experiences by sufferers of many flu-like illnesses. And many have made this connection this year with the pandemic, especially because people who are already sick with comorbidities, they're not just affected by one thing. They might be sick because of electropollution plus nutrient deficiencies, plus air toxin, plus water toxin, plus food toxins. It's a lot of things. And I know a lot of people want to hear about that link between a virus and 5G and whatnot, but I'll say this because I heard it from Magda Havas last week in a course I took online. Magda Havas has said that she did research on the possible link between this new virus and electropollution as a whole, not just 5G. She said electropollution definitely weakens the immune system. And she found a high correlation between areas of high electropollution and high mortality from this virus. It's not surprising. There's also high levels of air pollution in these areas. I can tell you that from my personal research, and also electropollution, not just 5G. I think it's a mistake to say it's just 5G that caused it. Electropollution, we're talking also about Wi-Fi and also about all these sources. So I don't, to answer a question I see in the chat, I don't know if it's going to be published. I don't know the status of that. I will ask Magda Havas. I'm interested to see it. I know it's, this link is so controversial that not a lot of people are even willing to touch it, but Magda Havas has not been stopped by threats to her reputation and whatnot. So she has just continued her work, and I appreciate her for that. So I will verify with her if it's going to be published eventually. If it's accepted by a journal, that is, it's difficult. Anyway, so
Yeah,
that's all.
Just to be clear, I saw somebody saying that somebody was saying in there, "Oh, this is going off base now. RF energy has nothing to do with COVID." That's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying that electropollution can weaken your immune system, and there was some correlations with high density areas where the death rates were higher, and people dying of this respiratory virus are higher. And it's exactly what Nick was saying. There's these higher density areas. So
exactly, and I don't think. Respectfully, if people are reacting and they don't want to look at that link, I understand that a lot of what has been said this year is not scientifically correct, or has caused a lot of people have put these people who may put that link forward in a certain category. Either you have this political allegiance, or maybe you're a crazy person, or whatever you think. But there is a real link, epidemiological link, between different types of pollution and high mortality from the virus and high comorbidities, right? So people are sick in cities. It's not, doesn't take a lot of science to tell you that. There's a lot of research that shows you live in a city, you're exposed to certain types of air pollution. The same can be said for electropollution, although I would want to, I saw one study published around electropollution as a whole and the link with mortality from respiratory virus, if you want to say that. We need more science. The reality, and that's just the world we live in this year with all this controversy, is that the likeliness this is going to be published is thin, because no researcher wants to even touch that with a stick. So that's just a reality. So the link that Magda Havas was saying, exactly what you said, Brian, is, well, it weakens the immune system. If you minimize electropollution, you just may take all the chances on your side to live a healthier life. Not to make any claim, it's just logical, right?
Exactly.
And among other things, it can improve your sleep, right? So if it improves your sleep, it improves your blood sugar, it improves your detoxification and everything else. So I want to say that some people who don't experience symptoms from electropollution, actually, they don't realize that they had been experiencing symptoms until they start reducing their exposure. And that's what happened from one of our course members this summer, from Stephanie from Lawrenceville, USA. And here's what she said. With these changes, I've had significant changes to my sleep. And she didn't really think she was electrosensitive necessarily, but that's the fact with a lot of people experiencing a much deeper sleep. And I don't wake up feeling tired and groggy anymore. I can't even remember the last time I've slept so well. This alone was worth taking the class, and I'm grateful I found this class, and she recommends the class. Thank you, Stephanie. But basically, I'll tell you about the course in just a second, but and then we're going to get into the Q&A session. But what I want to know is, do you want to know what Stephanie did? Because it's almost silly, right? You want to know what Stephanie did to get a better sleep? Because you'll see how simple it is. Just let me know in the chat. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let's
everybody's wanting solutions. I've been seeing people make comments.
Yeah. Exactly.
Come on.
Where are solutions? So you see that? Okay. Don't be deceived. The solutions are simple, but you gotta apply them. Right? So it's a matter of habits. So here's what she did. Very simple. She didn't even talk necessarily about Wi-Fi, but that would be a good point. I can add it first. Turn off Wi-Fi at night. That's a good thing, because you're not exposed to your own Wi-Fi. You might be exposed to the neighbors, but not to yours. So the basic EMF fix is this. Cell phone on airplane mode are turned off completely. Move all electronics, including your alarm clock, including your lamp. And there are reasons behind that, but we don't have time to get into the very nitty-gritty details. At least 3 feet from your pillow, or unplug them. electric fields. Just a little hint. Charge your phone at night using a power bank and not the wall outlet. That's a common mistake. A lot of people are charging their phone at night. They wake up in the morning, it's full. Do not do that. Use a power bank, those little portable batteries thing. So you can still, that's a portable battery for you, surely. So power bank, you Google, not Google that, search that on the internet. Do not use Google, DuckDuckGo, right? And then beware of other sources of wireless radiation, because in your room, you might have a computer, you might have a tablet, you might have Bluetooth wearables. Try to get those outside the bedroom. So none of this is fancy. Maybe you already heard a lot of this, but it's a great start. So of course, the ultimate solution, if you want to avoid all 5G and all different things that come from the exterior, that would be shielding your bedroom. And this is what Brian does with his team and what he can help you do. But this is not what this webinar is all about. This is the ultimate solution. But you see that even without going to the ultimate solution, if you go to the basics and you remove things from your vicinity while you sleep, she already got results, which is in itself, it tells you that the body can quickly pick up that you've removed all these stressors. So she really, I mean, Stephanie just felt the difference already and is starting to improve her wellness and the wellness of her entire family in the process. So that's your homework for today. After you leave this webinar, make sure to clean up your bedroom for a few consecutive nights and see how you feel, and let us know how it goes. Just get in touch if you can. Let us know I slept better, and just reply to maybe the emails we're going to send you with the replay. But do it, and try to do it in your entire household. And you know that sleep time is the most important time to do this, because it's when your nervous system wants to calm down, just to put it quite simply. And we want to, this is pretty much the end of this webinar. We're going to get into Q&A. Please stay. I want to summarize a few key takeaways before we move to the Q&A. So the first takeaway is this: 5G will greatly increase our global exposure to electro-pollution. That's part of the reason it's pretty bad. It's a very bad idea, including 5G satellites. Global exposure to electro-pollution. Electro-pollution equal bad. Various sources of electro-pollution are stressful to your body, and it's not just 5G. It's the previous Gs, and also think the other sources of artificial signals. And this also includes being exposed to a large screen TV with a lot of blue light, right? That's something we talk about in our course. Takeaway number 3, it's up to you to learn how to minimize all the sources of electro-pollution. And it's not just 5G again. It's not just 4G. It's the Wi-Fi and the 2G, 3G, Bluetooth, and the electric fields and magnetic fields and the electricity, and even artificial light. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. And there's a few reasons you've been listening to this webinar. So you want to know the truth about 5G and other sources of EMFs and protect yourself and your family. You've been doing your research for a little while. You're unsure what the risks are and how you can protect yourself. And you wish you could just know the exact steps of how to protect yourself and stop worrying about EMFs. But there's also something else. There's a reason you stuck with us so far, is that you don't believe in magic pills. Well, we don't either. So Brian and I have been seeing, it's just a reality. You're right. You look at, I don't like being a contrarian just for nothing, but we've been seeing a lot of EMF protection products appear on the market that make extraordinary claim. Some products you put on your body or whatever you do with it, they promise to protect you 100%. And the truth is that these devices, according to our research and opinion, right? Other people might have other opinion, and that's fine. But that's the truth as we know it, is that they likely offer only partial protection or reduction in the symptoms associated with electro-pollution. And that's why you would be hard-pressed to find EMF scientists like Magda Havas or EMF mitigation specialists with years of experience like Brian, who would tell you use a personal protection product, or you put an EMF blocking something on your body, and then you can use your cell phone all day in a reckless manner. No one tells you that, because we have not found a magic pill. So there are partial pills if you want, but what we believe is a better approach is a step-by-step approach to tackling the sources of electropollution, all sources of electropollution, not just 5G, and minimize your risk. And this is how we consider you can protect yourself by minimizing your load. And of course, we need to stop 5G and 6G and the satellites, but that's an activism thing. What about personal protection? The way we see it is that you minimize, well, first you identify what are the worst sources of electropollution in your life, in your home. Like, is it a 5G antenna? In that case, you would need someone to kind of test it out. Or is it your own Wi-Fi router? And maybe you're sleeping right next to it by mistake, right? So identify what really is impacting you and your family, not your neighbor, because maybe your neighbor is different. And then reduce their impact by eliminating the source altogether or minimizing how much they emit, all while respecting your budget and your busy schedule, because you don't have all the money or time in the world. And we completely understand that. We're in the same position as you are. And then a plan for the long term. So minimizing electropollution takes time, and you need to be strategic about how you can bring your spouse and family on board with these healthy changes. And that's difficult. I want to applaud you for taking these steps and wanting to do something about it, but it is a challenge getting people on board. But it is something you also need to take into consideration. So you have the reality that if you live alone, you can do all these changes and no one's going to bother you. If you live with other people, you need to deal with these other people. So that's just something to keep in mind. And we've put all this in a course. You know, this is the project we've been working on for several months. It's called Electro-Pollution Fix. And that's a course where we put everything, this entire mentality, how to minimize electro-pollution from all sources with you individually, with your family, without breaking the bank. And this entire presentation, the goal of this presentation was to make you aware that all these sources matter. And this is what we put in the course, teaching you a step-by-step approach. And we don't think it takes 5 minutes, or we don't think it requires one magic pill. We think it requires education. And this is what we've put in this class. And this entire class, you can see the details right under this video, wherever you're on YouTube or on Click Meeting. And just, I don't like spending a lot of time on this because it's all detail on the page, but it is a 6-week course. And I'm going to talk about the schedule a little bit, but it includes basically me and Brian presenting you with all the different types of electropollution that matter and how to tackle them. You have a Facebook group, you have the future updates that are also included. And there is an access to a Facebook group, and I see one person not interested in Facebook. That's fine. You know, we're looking for a new platform to move our group to, and this is a temporary thing, and it's not mandatory to get success on the Facebook group, to get success on this course. So basically, that's our promise with the course. After going through this course, we basically you will know how to dramatically reduce your exposure for you and your family, no matter if you own your place or you're renter, and no matter your budget and no matter your circumstances. And it doesn't mean you're going to be able to afford everything or do everything at once, but we're going to show you how to come up with your own version of that step-by-step EMF reduction plan, if you will. You'll be empowered with a clear path to the best and most affordable EMF protection interventions and tools that work for you. I want to go through the kind of education that we provide in this course goes from the very basics. Module 1, the first week on November 9th, we're going to go to the introduction and EMF basics to talk about the EMF lingo, what is radio frequency, wavelength, dirty electricity, all these terms that can make your head spin. We're going to really make these simple for you and make sure that you understand the basics. The week number 2 is minimizing artificial light. Artificial light is one of the most underrated and ignored types of EMFs that can really make a huge difference in your health. And it's also it's also a topic that a lot of family members are more excited to make changes with compared to Wi-Fi, for example. So it's also strategic to talk about light first. In the week number 3, combating wireless stress, we help you have a wireless hunt in your home and find all these hidden sources of wireless. And believe it or not, the average house has 11 device emitting stressful but silent EMF radiation in the wireless range. 11, and that's the average. So some people have 30 of them. So we help you find those, and a lot of those you wouldn't believe are emitting. Week number 4, we go in electric fields, dirty electricity. Both of those can be problematic. They're a little bit technical to understand, but we have a few strategies that you apply them, and for a lot of people, it gives them a very nice night of sleep. And from this point, they can pinpoint that I sleep better when I reduce. I really reduce this exposure to electrical fields, making a huge difference in my sleep. Number 5, avoiding magnetic fields. These very low levels of magnetic fields are linked with childhood leukemia. So there's solid science with that link in science, and yet it's ignored by electricians when sometimes there's wiring errors. You saw Brian talk about it in the sense that when there's wiring error and problems with household electricity, it can lead to very high levels of magnetic fields that electricians would disregard, but in reality, a lot of people cannot sleep properly in this environment. And then week 6, that's where a lot of people are excited. I want to talk about 5G. I want to know about outside sources. We talk about what you can actually do about this outside sources of radiation. This session will greatly reduce the anxiety that you feel towards these outside sources of EMFs, and want to make you feel empowered to use technology in a safer way. I also know what you can do in the future with 6G and 7G and whatever Gs are happening, you know? So if you want to join us, the information is right below the video. So in the meantime, let's get into a few details. So the classes are Mondays at 7 p.m. And at 7 p.m. EST, starting Monday, November 9th. You do not have to be there live. We always appreciate it if you're there live. You do not have to be there live. And I mentioned that. I know there are some people in Europe, it's the middle of their night. Don't worry about it. You get all the recordings. Like if people need to leave, by the way, I'm fine with that. There's going to be a recording if you want to listen to the Q&A session. I'm almost done with that thing. But you do not have to be there live, but we always appreciate it. There's Q&A sessions every week for 6 weeks. So you don't have to take it November 9th. If you're too busy and you start in January, that's fine. You're going to get access. It is audio and video. It is a presentation like that, very professional. You will have access to the slides. You have access to documentations. And also you have access to future iterations of the course. So that's important. All the updates. So we are working, Brian and I are going to sit after this class, maybe take a short break because we've been working a lot. I think before Christmas, we can start achieving something. We're going to do another version of this class that's going to be pre-recorded. You get access to that. So if you join now, the registrations are only until November 6th. It means you're going to get access to all future versions, right? It's going to be free for you because you're a member. And if you want to be part of the Facebook group, you can. It's optional, and we do recommend it because it's a cool environment. And like we said, some people do not want to be on Facebook. There's a lot of censorship on Facebook at the moment. It's definitely not the right place to be for 5G, to be honest. We're going to look at another place where we can go, maybe a private forum or something like that. I think, Brian, it's essential, especially with what's happening in the last few weeks.
We'll eventually switch to a whole new platform, and we're looking at a few different things. That's something Nick and I are really passionate about, is our privacy and your privacy. And the thing that we really do in this class that I love is it's a community. We're humble, we're humbled to be your teachers in this, but people like our students are helping each other, and we're posting. We have homeworks every week, and people are posting things and not only just like things they're finding around their house, but they're getting their families involved, and we really try to make it a very interactive, as interactive as possible. And people are making friends online, like a really close connections with each other in these groups, you know. And when we get on Facebook, I think it'll be even better because they'll just be this relief of okay,
Yeah, exactly.
we're not being spied on by Big Brother all the time anymore, you know, or whatever. But
Exactly. There are good reasons to leave Facebook. If only for the moment their corporate policies around health information is horrid. I can just tell you that. That's just a reason. What I've seen censored on Facebook, EMFs, and 5G. I'm for free speech as a whole. If someone wants to say 5G is super dangerous or 5G does nothing, I want them to express themselves. And Facebook has done corporate overreach of deciding what's legit, what's not, and I hate that. It's really my personal thing is over that, and then there are concerns over privacy and a bunch more. So just understand that this course, it's on Facebook. Yes, we have a Facebook group, but it's optional. The main presentations will be done maybe on Click Meeting. Brian, if you like this platform, I think it's better than Zoom.
This. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it's going to be on Click Meeting like this, very professional manner. We're going to have a Q&A session. It's going to be a smaller group than today's webinar. We have a few people that just joined us. We have Cynthia, we have Michelle, we have Garth, Ken, Karen. Thank you so much. It's exciting. I mean, I know we're going to have a lot of people joining us this week before the registration close on November 6th. And I'm excited to have new faces. And I know there's a lot of people who were in the course this summer that are going to take the class again, be with you, be able to mingle, answer your questions. So it's going to be a large group, Brian. I think we're going to have a lot of action. And it's exciting to see that.
Yeah, I love we're connecting with people from all over the world, and you know, we're taking video around your house, like, you know, if it's that's always optional, but like testing things, asking.
We want it to be affordable. It's $99 USD for courses like that. There are a few that charge a few $100s. You know, we want it to be middle range. Again, we cannot make it free because there's a lot of costs associated. And yes, we're for-profit business. I know some in the activism world, some prefer to be nonprofit. We have a family to feed. We decide on another business model, but we want it to be fair. So I think it is fair, and with everything that you're getting, in the future, we do want to, that's something we're planning, to be perfectly honest. We do want maybe to have something like name your own price if people are electrosensitive and essentially have no money or financial difficulties, because we're giving a fraction of the proceedings of this course. I forgot to mention that, but we're giving to EMF related charities. We gave to Children's Health Defense. We gave to that ESI Media, that's an independent media channel, to try to bring the truth out in an independent way with Ben Swan. So we're also trying to give back and price things reasonably for everyone, basically. And let's get here. Hold on. What did I do? So the final step, if you want to join, just explaining to make sure you understand the process. You scroll under the video. There's a button. You take your time, please, to look at what is included, the price, and whether you think it's a fair thing for you. But we would love to have you on board. Just keeping in mind that the registrations are only open for a week. Then you enter it can be credit card, it can be PayPal, whatever you prefer. And then we have also a special offer you're going to see in the funnel. So it's an EMF meter that we recommend. It's called the ESI 24. We give the best discount, basically, that you're going to ever get from us. At this point, it's optional, but I know some people want to go all in and purchase their first meter, and they're excited. So that's just an option. If you do not want it, you just click no, and no harm done. No worries about it. Then you'll be able to log into the members area. The members area is simply a password protected page at the moment, and you're going to see that on there's a bonus video on how to use the ESI 24. That's something very useful. Whether you have the ESI 24 or not, you have the Cornet or Tri-Field, you're going to be able to get a lot of value from this video. So you can already check it out, and you can already join the Facebook community. Again, It's completely optional, highly recommended. We've got doctors in there, we've got health practitioners, we've got EMF mitigation specialists. Everyone's there to help out. It's a real community, and I'm really excited about that. And before we move on to the Q&A session, I'm gonna just do one last thing, because and this is I think, are you there, Mio? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're there in the chat, just say hi, and people can say. Okay, I don't know if he's still online, but Mio was.
She's
Oh,
there.
he's here. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you took the time to write this. Basically, Mio said, I did not know what to expect when I signed up for the course, but I have to say it was the best $99 I spent in my life. So that's Mio saying it, but not me. Since I moved into my new home, I've had a hard time sleeping. And that's something that happens sometimes. You change environments and all of a sudden you don't feel well. It has gotten so bad that I had to go back to my old house or forest to have a decent sleep. That's common for a lot of people who suffer from mild to moderate symptoms from electro hypersensitivity. And I knew something specific in this house was affecting my sleep, and soon found out that the high EMF levels in the house were the culprit. And basically, moving on to say, this course taught me how to improve my sleep environment and create a sleep sanctuary. I'm finally sleeping in my own house. So that was a very exciting thing to see when Mio shared that in the Facebook group. And everything Brian and Nick taught us in this course was very relevant to our everyday life, easily applicable. And finally said, if you're new to EMS and EMF mitigation, this course is for you. I'm going to add something, though. If you're advanced, or if you consider yourself advanced in knowledge, but not necessarily in applying this content, well, I do recommend the course. And there's a 30-day guarantee that we give, 100% money back. And if you're not sure this is for you, I really commend you to, or encourage you to register now. And then you're going to be able to take the first 2 weeks. And if you don't like the content, or like, no, that's way too newbie for me, you can ask for your money back. But a lot of people have realized they're fairly advanced, but they need a refresher and a tech and a strategy on how to apply this stuff to their life. So just keep in mind that the registrations are closing on November 6th. You're going to get a few more communications from us. And if you need to leave now, there's going to be the replay, the recording of this, plus the Q&A session. So I feel completely comfortable, but we're going to take your questions right now, and we're going to stay for a little while. I think, Brian, can you stay until 10 p.m. EST after all? Are you good for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
45. So I'm just going to read a few things. We have more people joining us. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Noel, Akira, Teresa, and Teresa. 2 Teresas in a row. Marilee, Julian. I'm so excited to have you on board. So let's take a few questions. We have the Brian, do you have the questions in front of you? Are you good with that?
Did you have some pre-made questions, or just the ones in the that are coming on the chat here? Oh, Q&A mode?
Yeah, the Q&A mode is enabled. So if you go at the bottom right and you click the question mark, it's going to basically transform the chat into the Q&A mode. So if you click on the Q&A mode, Brian, also bottom right, you can scroll. And I mean, there's a lot of those. So some of them are comments, but some of them are questions. I also, if you're listening to this still on YouTube and our alternative page, I'm going to take some questions from YouTube. So maybe I start with a question from YouTube. Does wearing shungite help? And I'm going to just encompass all the questions about shungite and subtle energy devices and pendants and chips and these things. We have a statement that you're going to get, an article that we wrote in the scope of this course about what we think about these devices. Basically, if you use shungite, if you use different things and you feel better, and they don't cause harm to your person, well, you can probably keep doing it. However, there's some studies on shungite that I need to dive into, honestly, and most of it is from Russia. But I've seen good evidence sent to me by André Fauter, who's here in Quebec. So there's some research about shungite being, I would think, partially protective or reducing symptoms. So that's the science tidbit for you.
I wouldn't say protective necessarily in that it's reduces
exactly
the field, but but that it helps support
It helps
the
support,
symptoms.
reduces the stress caused by. So
There you
that's the
go.
difference. If you wear a pendant or something like that and you feel better, it's not necessarily because you're protected, and that's where I don't like the verbiage that some people use when they sell those. However, it can make you feel better. So if you use that, if you use a personal protection thing, it's not something that we tell you, no, this is a pure scam and stop using it. No, you can keep using it. However, our approach is not that. Our approach is to minimize the amount of different things. Think about it like air pollution. You're exposed to a bunch of toxins in the air or water and food, and then you take something to detox. Well, you can take something to detox, but you should also avoid toxins. So our course is avoid toxins in the first place. Other things that can support your body, we're all for it, but we don't think it's your best investment technically. Brian, do you have a question you've identified, buddy?
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so how best to approach and deal with family members and friends who don't believe in or understand the subjective reality of electromagnetic sensitivity? So that is like one of my top questions that I get, and I'm very
Yeah.
passionate about this, as Nick kind of found out as we dove into creating this course together. And that's something we cover extensively in the course.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just kind of give you guys a preview of that. We have a whole spiel on this, a whole like section of the course where we talk about this. But basically, my approach is to approach it with non-ionizing, non-thermal radiation does have a biological effect on the human body. And a really easy example is talking about light. Light is an
Oh yeah.
electromagnetic frequency, and we know that light like helps to dictate our circadian rhythms. And blue light can be toxic at night at the wrong time, right? And that has a profound effect on our hormones. And so when that's an easy way, and that's non-ionizing, and it's non-thermal, and it has a massive biological effect. And then from there, you can talk about how electricity impacts the body. How basically, how do we restart a heart? We pump voltage through the heart, and it's a muscle, and so it contracts. And when it contracts, it's using up calcium, and when it relaxes, it's using up magnesium. So contraction, relaxation, those little electrodes that you put on your body, how those can stimulate your muscle contractions. So electricity is impacting our body, and our whole body is running off of these electrical signals. The heart has been shown to be communicating with the brain all the time. So there's multiple ways that you can approach family members with this, but starting with light is very sensible. And then also there's certain research, the research of Dr. Martin Pall that we referenced in this webinar, is very, very convincing, because he talks about the mechanism of action. And he has the survey of I think it's over 30 studies now that show how electromagnetic fields, whether it's wireless or low frequency electric or magnetic fields, are activating these voltage gated calcium ion channels. And in these studies, they activate there's one group both groups are exposed, and then one group they put on calcium channel blockers, and they don't have the same symptoms as the people that are in the other group that are not on the calcium channel blockers. So he proves the mechanism that the EMFs cause damage. It's like almost where there shouldn't really be a controversy anymore on how non-ionizing, non-thermal radiation can do damage and affect the body. So that's kind of how I would approach it. Start with light, and then go on to talking about some of these studies and the mechanism by which the damage can happen.
Awesome. This is great, Brian. And we have an entire video. In fact, that's a bonus. Almost, I think I forgot to mention it in the entire section at the end. We have a few bonuses. But let me just mention something. We have a few people that just joined us. Hold on, let me just do something. That's Jean or Jean. I don't know if he's French. That's the thing. Sorry about that, Jean. Marianne, we have Sandia, we have Kathy, Vincent or Vincent. I don't never know if I should pronounce your names in French. I'm sorry about that. Janet, Eric, and I'm really glad you guys are joining us. And again, you can just scroll down this page if you want more details about the course. But let me look at something that's important, I think. This one is for you, Brian. What about the special bed canopy? Can you quickly talk about maybe just the 2-minute version of what is a shielded room? Because ultimately, that's something we mentioned in the course. That's an ultimate level of protection, of real protection, but that's something to strive towards, right? When you've at least taken care of the basics that we teach in the class.
Yeah, so the course really it's kind of like a primer. It that gives you practical solutions to do everything that you can within your power right now for minimal cost, and so it guides you through all of those steps. Ultimately, I'm a health practitioner. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner with functional nutrition, and so I got into this field because I was caring for my clients and realizing that EMF was a huge issue. And I wanted to create a protocol where like it's not just about, like, if I have somebody who comes in that has celiac, it's not just about cutting out donuts and butter rolls. It's about cutting out all the gluten whatsoever in your entire diet and seeing how the body can activate healing. And so with EMF, it's very similar that way. You can reduce your exposures and things like that, and you can see a massive difference. But ultimately, how do we recreate this environment where we can wake up these dormant healing responses in the body to basically start healing the body with the way that the innate body does the healing? So when you're talking about shielding a room, it's both simple and complex, because if you do it wrong, you could make the situation worse. And a bed canopy is one way that you can actually, it's more foolproof because it's a contained system where you don't have as much leakage. But the issue is that a lot of the canopies that are out there, they don't have full shielding capability for some of the higher frequencies, or they can't be grounded, so it's not protecting against electric fields. So my company, we've tried to address some of those things, and we now have a canopy that we're coming out with that's addressing some of those issues, and it's also a more hypoallergenic material. But shielding a room, doing the canopies, that's like the ultimate solution to kind of putting your body in a time capsule, going back in time, and having it be like more what humans were exposed to over 200 years ago before electricity. And the things that we've seen when people do that, it's just incredible what happens. And so that's part of it. And there's a priority system that we go over in the course about when's the most important time to be shielded. And the number one time is when you're sleeping, because that's when your body's detoxing. That's when your lymphatics are draining, and that's when your body's rebuilding and using all the awesome nutrient-dense whole foods that you've been eating all day long to rebuild the tissues, and then spit out and spew out the oxidative stress that was created from being exposed to the EMF all day long. Yeah. So that's the gist of it, is getting that is the ultimate goal. But there's so much that you can do before that, and that's really what the course is about. Reducing your cumulative exposure and identifying and noticing all the different things.
Yeah, that's well stated. It's everything else that you can do. And then in the last week, in fact, week 6, we do have Brian talk a little bit more in depth about advanced shielding as an option. I mean, some people can afford it, some people can't, or some people will save towards it because we think it's a great investment in your health. But this class is not about shielding a room. And I know a lot of people want to jump straight to shielding, and if that's you can do that. But again, without shielding a room or hiring a professional, there's so many things you should understand and should do at first. And this is the foundation that we want to teach you with the course, right? So that's why you don't need an EMF meter. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need you don't need to purchase anything that we're going to recommend during the course either, because after the course, you start determining what is your strategy. Should you completely eliminate Wi-Fi if the family is going to be on board with that, or is that not a good solution right now? So maybe you're going to keep it off, and when people want to use it, you turn it on, like a kind of reverse thing. Or maybe you're going to invest in one of those eco Wi-Fi routers that we talk about. So there's a few things that you can do, alternatives, and we talk about all of those and then some, and give you documentation with solutions about your Wi-Fi, solutions about your computer, and these kind of things. So that it's important. And Diana just asked me on the YouTube side, will I learn how to read the EMF meter? In fact, yes, we show you how to read the ESI 24 because that's the one we recommend. However, we have documentation that comes with it that shows you a little bit what the different units of measurements use on a cornet, for example, on a tri-field, and what levels to strive for. Generally speaking, and you'll be disappointed by this, but we prefer to tell the truth as it is, you want the lowest setting on almost nearly every meter out there. The lowest setting is what we would start considering safer, and not even safe because we don't know what's safe, because we don't have the science to tell us, well, a little bit of these EMFs is just fine, you can handle. We don't know that for sure. So on the safe side is lower is better, and realistically achievable is better than completely unrealistic. So there's also that, like, what can you achieve in your life? And then we show you how to go from you're doing nothing at the moment to you're doing something, and then you're doing great. Yep. And then gradually you take care of these sources.
Yeah. And honestly, I will say this, that, as we gather data, I mean, I have a team of 5 people that travel all over the country, and we do like 30 to 50 EMF assessments per month on average. And we're collecting a lot of data before and after with our customers. We've got a new survey that we're working on symptoms before and after shielding and that sort of thing, and implementing a lot of these things. But a lot of our customers that have had assessments before you and I created this course, they're going back and taking this course and being like, oh my gosh, you gave me all these recommendations before, but now I'm actually understanding why you recommended all this stuff, and seeing, because with the course we really dive in deep with a lot of this stuff. So I think it's just so important to understand, and this format kind of, even doing this webinar, it's a format where we're able to interact and see what questions are really out there. And someone asked about targeted individuals. That's interesting. We don't talk about that. I am aware of that, and I met somebody who was called they call TI, or targeted individual, at a conference last year, and we actually scanned his whole body to see if he had some kind of bug on him. Interesting. That's way off topic, though.
Yeah. Can you still hear me? By the way, someone in the chat told me my mic doesn't sound okay, or maybe can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay. What about in the chat? Just let me know. I just want to make sure that my recording is not all good. Okay. Well, maybe someone has an individual issue. There's room, by the way, if you need to leave and rejoin. At the moment, we have around 500 people that are left. There's a few new names in the course. I'm really excited to see you in the class starting November 9. There's Anna, Danielle, Sonia, Karen, Angie, Susan. So I'm really excited. Thank you guys. We're so excited to have you guys on board. There's something, where did I set that? I use a cable. Hold on. I had something here, and then it just, can we put our Wi-Fi router on an on-off timer so it turns off at night and on during the day for safer sleep? Yes, that's a great suggestion. That's something we tell people to do as one of the solutions to minimize at least your time of use for Wi-Fi. Put it on a timer, or you can turn it off manually quite simply. But on a timer is always good because people don't have to wake. Maybe, I don't know, you're in your bed sheets at night, it's 11 p.m. and chances are you will not go to the basement to turn off that darn Wi-Fi router. And I understand the feeling. I don't want to get up. So that's something to keep in mind, that there are solutions to automate this process. And the ultimate step that we teach in the course is how to wire your computer and use a wire for your phone and use a wire for different things. But again, that's a step above, and you decide what you're comfortable with. And it depends on what your spouse might be comfortable with and what your teenage kids might be comfortable with. Because again, that's a course where we understand that the last thing you want to do is make this a battle against your family, because that's a slippery slope and it can create a lot of tension in the household. And that's, I don't have the street smarts that Brian has, and I have the book smarts, and I've written this book 3 years ago, and I did another course for professionals, and I've been studying a lot, but I lack the understanding of what it is to implement this stuff. And that's why when we brainstormed initially this summer, me and Brian, to create this class, I was really, really surprised about certain things. And I understood that he came at it from another angle. Like, yes, ideally you get rid of Wi-Fi. Ideally you get rid of those pesky sources of stressful wireless. But what if your spouse will jump at you and be angry just if the Wi-Fi is not stable, right? These people that are addicted to these devices, well, you still love them. And it's difficult to bring this to their attention. So we have strategies for that. And that's really what makes this course special, I think, is that we're going to teach you, yes, you can wire, but you can also do other things that maybe aren't as aggressive at first. And then maybe in the future, you'll want to upgrade your strategies to minimize your exposure further. So it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. In fact, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And then it's something that's going to evolve over time as you get better and as the family becomes accustomed to these new changes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and it's something that we're really passionate about. Is like, why would you even try to implement the solutions if eventually, like the people, there's so much resistance inside of the household. And that's something that I take very seriously as a professional in this field, is that someone chooses to hire me to come into their home, and I'm maybe their only shot at ever fixing these problems that they ever have, because there's somebody in the house who is resistant to the idea. So it's my job, and I feel like it's our job through this course to help introduce these in a wise way, these concepts, so that we have the best chance of getting as many families protected as possible. And so, part of the goal for me when I train my team is, how can we be more effective at helping people implement solutions, especially when there's someone in the household who is skeptical or might kind of sort of block the family from getting the type of protection that they need. And we go over a lot of that kind of stuff in this course on how to go about bringing people along, getting them involved, and that sort of thing. But it's really, really important to also know, have some guidelines on, okay, if you do hire a professional, which is an essential step at some point in your EMF mitigation path, when you do that, we have like a set of bullet points that you kind of want to go through, and like, this is what you want to look for. And there's many amazing professionals out there. I try to do a good job training my team to be, some of the best. And but there are others out there, and if you follow those guidelines, then you're going to find somebody who's going to actually do good by you, and hopefully will help you to implement the solutions that you need, even if there is somebody in the household who's resistant to the change.
That's great. And Patty asks here, I'm going to click on publish. Do you have PDFs that come with the course? Yes. So what happens is, with the course, you're getting the live session. Again, if you don't attend live, you get the video anyway. So if it's not the right time at 7 p.m. starting November 9th, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm so busy and it's not going to work this fall, that's fine too. You can simply, maybe during the weekend, you carve out a little bit of time. It's a 1 hour session usually with a little bit of Q&A. And then if you want to even skip this session, we have basically a summary of the recommendations that come with every session, like our recommendations for wireless, our recommendations for magnetic fields, for electric fields and dirty electricity, all the different types that you're going to learn, even artificial light, which is week number 2. You're going to learn week by week the different types and how to tackle them. And you have a lot of documentation, and you have the slides, so you can learn with the video if that's what you prefer. You can also look at the PDFs, and if you're a fast learner, go through the PDF, start doing the changes, maybe write something in the Facebook group to that effect about what changes you're seeing, and go from there. So it's really a done for you approach where you can choose your own adventure in this class, and if you cannot attend live, it's completely optional.
Okay, here's a good question. I don't know if sometimes I feel like I start to talk and I still see your mouth moving, Nick. So I'm not sure if I'm interrupting you or not. But
not at the moment, no fun.
Okay. So one question here: could EMF exposures cause what seems to be an increase in AFib with patients? Yes, definitely. I actually had a colleague of mine, a nutrition colleague of mine, who was an instructor for a nutrition organization at the time, and she was having a lot of heart palpitations whenever she would go into a dead zone where she couldn't have cell phone reception. When you do that, your phone starts to pulse and try to reach the tower, and she would get heart palpitations. And then she also noticed whenever her friends would come, like when a group of people would come toward her with all their cell phones, and that she would get heart palpitations, and near walking by smart meters on the road, that sort of thing. So there's a huge link to heart arrhythmias and palpitations and that sort of thing with people who are exposed to especially the pulsating types of frequencies with the radio frequencies. So it's huge for heart health.
I have another one here that says, were you saying to not plug our phones in the bedroom, or is it don't plug it anywhere in the house? So basically the recommendation about charging the phone at night is because the phone itself, when it's connected to electricity, there are 2 types of fields that it creates. There's a magnetic field that is fairly close to the phone, but I've seen people sleep and their phone is not only charging but under their pillow, and the phone is here all night. So that's the worst scenario. Is that airplane mode is good, but it cuts out the wireless radiation. But when it's plugged in, there's electric fields and there's magnetic fields. So that's why if it's somewhere in the room and it's charging, that could be fine, airplane mode in all cases. But if it's close to you by your bedstand, we prefer not to have stuff with electricity that's plugged in, because your body voltage, so how much electricity is actually kind of doing low level under your level of perception electric shocks all night and making you buzz a little bit, right? That's happening without you realizing it, and it's contributing to that. So ideally, around your bed, there shouldn't be anything plugged in, bringing electricity to your body. So that's the overall principle between not charging the phone right next to your pillow.
Yeah.
Do you have a next you've seen, Brian?
Yeah, let's see here. My landlord is not interested in talking about anything electrical, especially EMF mitigation. I rent. There's a huge demographic out there that's not able to improve their dirty electricity because they rent. I wish there were government initiatives that would incentivize landlords. Well, I think that, it's a hard situation when you are renting and you don't have as much control, but we do cover a lot of those kind of things in the course, like what you can do if you're in a temporary situation. Obviously, you can't use shielding paint on the walls. You'd want more mobile solutions that you can take with you. You can do things like filter the dirty electricity with some various plugins that we might recommend.
Mm-hmm. That's what I did. I've done that a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And then, there's simple things like unplugging things, moving your bed away from the wall, different solutions like that. Replacing light bulbs. Most landlords let you change the light bulbs to light bulbs that you want. So there are some things that you can do. And that's, again, it's as if you have this bucket that's full of all these stressors, and you're just taking a little cup and dumping it out, like
Mhm.
one thing at a time, and removing those stressors more and more. And then when you do that, you can handle more of that stress during the day or more at other times. And so, that's what's so important, is we're looking at this from a very holistic standpoint of, as a health practitioner, I'm worried about all of the different stressors that you have in your life, and allergens and toxins and things like that. But from this EMF perspective, if we just work on some of these things and lower your what we call your EMF burden, then you're able to tolerate more energetically, but also sometimes, like, you'll be able to tolerate more, like if you've had a hard time with a certain type of food. We've had customers who lower their reduce their EMF exposure, and then they can eat certain foods again that they couldn't eat before. So, we think of the body as this, so like deductively, and but really it's this organism where everything is affecting everything else. And so we have to think about it from that perspective, and EMF is no different. If you fix all your EMF, you're in a pristine environment, and we still have all these toxic chemicals, herbicides and pesticides, and GMO foods, and all this stuff that's out there. You're not going to be perfectly healthy just because you have a perfectly good EMF environment. It's a holistic perspective, but EMF is a piece of the puzzle, and we're really excited to be able to help you with questions now. And if you decide to take the course, we'll take you step by step through how to see that light at the end of the tunnel, so you don't have to worry about the problems of EMF anymore.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I think it's also when you have that knowledge, doesn't mean you're not worried about the rollout of these satellites. And I mean, engineers have been looking at 6G, I think, for 2 years now from industry news. So it won't stop. It won't stop until it's gonna get worse until it gets better, right? So it doesn't mean you're not concerned about that, but at least you're doing something about it, and you know that you're reducing these sources at home, you're doing something substantial. If you shield your room, this is going above and beyond. But even that, you step outside, what's happening? Well, you're exposed, right? So being unexposed doesn't exist anymore, except in certain radio silent zone, and even then, we're starting to lose them. So it's a very difficult question and very difficult to navigate, especially for people very sensitive. But if you tackle the sources at home, it's good for everyone. It's not like you need to be exposed to more EMFs. I want to just thank. I think it's. I'm so sorry. I'm going to thank you and butcher your name at the same time. Murdad, I think. Kathy, thank you so much for becoming members. And again, you take your time to look at, if you're looking at the replay at the moment, take your time to look at the offer and what's included in the course. And registrations are closing on November 6th. So we have about 8 days. There's also Susan and Joan. Thank you so much. I'm excited to see you guys in the Facebook group if you're interested. And just one thing, someone mentioned tinnitus. I should have included it in the list of potential symptoms.
That's the 10th. That's the 10th symptom. Someone was saying there's only 9 on the slide, and I was like, oh yeah, they're right. So that's the 10th.
I think I probably screwed up that slide. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that's probably the 10th. The missing 10th is tinnitus, or different disruptions of senses. But tinnitus is very common. What I've seen common is people with tinnitus who've had it for a very long time. Their tinnitus gets way better if they either get in a shielded room or shielded environment, or in nature somewhere in a almost radio silent zone. So it's hard to find, but if they get there, they go camping and it's wilderness, there's no cell phone towers around, again, very rare, so low cell phone coverage, all of a sudden they see their symptoms better. And that's an indication for all of you listening to this at the moment. If you feel way better when you go camping, well, part of the reason might be the electro-pollution environment, and part of the reason might be other stressors in your everyday life, of course, air pollution and traffic and your job and whatnot. And these days in a city, it's a stressful environment to say the least this year. With a lot of stress in the air, you can feel it. But also, electropollution is part of it. So think about it. I just want to recognize or acknowledge everyone that's staying on. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. I know we're way over time compared to what we announced ending at 9:30 p.m. EST. We're going to stay until 10, so 15 more minutes. But again, feel free to leave now if you have other things to do. It's completely fine. And we're recording all of this, and it's going to be available tomorrow morning. I think tonight I'm going to just edit these replays and send them by email tomorrow morning in your inbox. So I just want to be respectful to everyone's time. But again, we can take more questions for 15 more minutes. In the meantime, we have Janet and Susan who joined us also. So thank you so much for being new members. Brian, do you have something else you saw as a very relevant question for everyone?
Yeah, let's do... Does installing aluminum foil type attic insulation cause problems? It really depends on the situation. There's a lot of debates in the community about shielding, and I kind of depend a lot on my customers who are electrosensitive for some really good information. And one of the things that I've come to a conclusion of is that aluminum should not be used for a primary shielding material because it's highly reflective, and also, especially if the person is installing it, aluminum is a neurotoxin, and if you're handling it a lot without the proper respirator and there's particles flying everywhere, that can be problematic. So especially in the attic, it's not as big of a deal if you hire someone else to do it, and you hand them what the protective equipment they need to install it. Maybe not as much of a deal. But the aluminum has this resonance phenomenon with it as well, where it blocks the primary RF frequency that most people are measuring with their meter. But as it blocks that, it starts to resonate at a different frequency that's mostly undetectable by commercial equipment. But people who are electrosensitive can sense that, and it sometimes causes them even more physiological problems and symptoms. And it'll go out as far as 4 feet or more, depending on how strong the field strength is that it's blocking. And then also, if it's not grounded properly, that can cause issues with the lower frequencies as well, or ground current, dirty electricity type frequencies, things like that. So the type of material that you use ultimately in shielding is very important. And in many situations, I've seen it where people worsen the problem by doing something that they saw on YouTube, for instance, or
Yeah.
And I at first, when I got into this, I searched around YouTube. I was trying to find the cheapest, easiest solutions and things like that. But I didn't want to use my nutrition clients as guinea pigs either. So my goal in learning about this stuff over the years was to find who the experts are and see what the highest standards are, and then match those, and then go above and beyond. And I feel like so privileged to be able to have worked with some of the top functional medicine professionals. I've worked with Dr. Mercola, I've worked with Dr. Ben Lynch, Dr. Stephanie from Dallas,
MacArthur.
McCarter, yeah, Dr. McCarter from the Environmental Health Clinic in Dallas, and then Santa Vive Medical Institute down in Mexico. We've
nice, that's true.
Recently done some work with them. So all of these physicians that we're working with and health professionals, we're working with a lot of their patients and installing solutions, getting feedback. And so it's this constant in the trenches thing that's going on. And we're discovering more and more about practicality, improving the process, and what's working and what's not working out there. And a lot of people in this industry, they tend to learn about something a long time ago and then just continue to do the same thing. And it's that way in any industry. Some people want to improve and change things, and others, they just want to keep doing the same thing all the time. And there's a big difference between doing that. And in order to be the most helpful, I think, and that's one of the reasons why this course is so important, is because you buy it one time and then you get all the updates. So everything that I
Yeah.
discover or you discover, Nick, in the future is updated, and everybody gets like the download of, okay, here's what's going on in EMF. So I fixed all my EMF problems, but let's just see the update and see if there's anything new. And then you get all the new information, and that's the update. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a reality that, again, like I said, things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better. And that's just, we're doing our best. I mean, we're both advocates, we're both spreading the word. We've been featured on so many media, kind of trying to scream at the top of a mountain, like, hey, EMFs matter and our technologies are not safe. But at the moment, it's kind of the entire society is moving towards like smart cities and this wireless craziness. So staying up to date to these development is sometimes it's a little bit of a mental load, but again, you want to be informed and not ignorant, and I know that's why you're still here listening to this. I have a question from David that's pretty straightforward, but it's a good question. He talks about exposure to blue light. Is it important to limit exposure to blue light, especially before sleep? For sure, and that's probably something you guys heard, because this is a pretty mainstream fact now. Even Apple, they put this. It's not fantastic, but it's a slight amber filter, or the color of the iPhone changes to slightly amber with the night shift mode. What we recommend in the course is different things to tackle artificial light, which is in itself an entire presentation on the week number 2 of the course. And we help you reduce blue light by first, getting your lighting environment right. So if you're staying at a screen at night, normally we recommend blue blocking glasses. So
yeah.
that's the case of a lot of people. We recommend the right bulbs to use for your lighting, especially at night, right? Because at night is when your body is more susceptible to getting disrupted by this electro-pollution, including light pollution. So we do tackle this, and there's an entire module on that, David. So I hope you join us. It's like a bit of a charge question that I can only answer in 60 minutes, and we have 8 minutes left.
Yeah, well, let me do a quick little extemporaneous demo here and update to our course, which I haven't even shared this with Nick, but this is some new information exclusive for the webinar that's going to be updated in the new course. So
I'm excited.
So I'm sitting here in my on my office, and you guys can see I've got a white light above me. There's tons of blue light in there, and I'm not wearing my blue blockers, but I've got my spectrometer here, and I'm taking the spectrum, and if you can see that, see how low the blue light is on there?
Yeah, so that's if blue light was really, really high, on the bottom left of your screen, there would be a huge peak, right? But it's super low. It's super small. Okay.
And so watch what happens when when I turn off here. I'll just keep it in there.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's the end of the webinar. I'm going to turn off
I've got my photon lights on here, which we talk about in the course, the sauna space photon lights. I'm going to turn off one. And now I'm going to look at the spectrum shift there. Now I'm going to turn off the other one. And you can see how that spectrum shifted, and now there's a blue peak there.
Yeah, I see it.
And everything shifted over. So when I turn it back on, it helps to cancel out a lot of the blue light that I'm receiving. And I'm pointing this right at the light up here. And so it gets lower when I get closer to the light, and when I go like this, it's almost completely gone. So it's a big change, and blue cancels out or red cancels out the blue light essentially. And so I didn't feel like I wanted to wear my glasses. I don't like having a barrier between me and the screen, even though it can be healthy right now. But on the webinars and stuff like that, I kind of like having free reign. But these lights kind of help to mitigate that blue light.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So again, that's one of the solutions. You can wear the blue blockers, but you can change the bulbs or even have other lights that kind of cancel out the bad lighting. So it's, I mean, and it's why I love being your partner on this project, Brian. Always bringing something new almost every week, and this is the kind of stuff that's very, very impressive. And you have the equipment to show it to people and to show it to me, like this is what it changes, because the reader you've been using in this demonstration, it shows the spectrum, like how the fraction of blue light, of orange, of red and green. And this is important when we talk about human health, and especially the range in the blue. To just give people some context, the blue is the worst for it keeps you awake at night. So it's the worst kind of exposure, along with green light at night, and the one that reduces at night, exactly. And during the day you want it. So it's, I mean, it gets complicated, but that's why we have an entire module on that. So geez, we're almost running to the end of this show, guys. Let's take two more. Okay. This is a little bit technical. Let's take two that we think are going to be good for everyone. Brian, something we answered in the course, but that's fairly common. What about that for you? What EMF risks are associated with sleeping with a CPAP every night?
So that's a good question. And for those of you who might not know what CPAPs are, it's a device that people use who have sleep apnea to regulate their breathing so that they have a more normal breathing pattern. And because there's a lot of stops in the breathing from the airway closing up. And so sometimes the CPAP machines are too close to the bed. It can cause a magnetic field. There's a motor running in it that can penetrate into the bed. And then there's also the electric fields. Some can be operated on a battery. So if you have a CPAP machine model that can be operated on a battery, that's better than the kind that plug in, because that's going to give you more AC, alternating current electric fields. But one interesting little nugget of information is that, there's a clinic in Austria that they put in a lot of shielding solutions for their patients, and 75% of their patients who put in the shielding solutions and mitigated EMF, who were on a CPAP machine, got off their CPAP machine after they took care of their EMF radiation in their bedroom. So that's like a huge percentage. And, we know that like people who have sleep apnea, it affects your breathing, it affects your heart, and obviously your airways and everything. And electricity impacts a lot of the same things. So when your heart is disrupted, it can be disrupted through electrical stimulation, just like when you restart a heart, like we talked about earlier. That's interfering with the normal rhythm of the heart, or just restarting a heart altogether. And there's actually a video on YouTube with what's the guy's name, Woodward, where I forget his first name, but they have a smart meter and they're hooked somebody up to an EKG machine, and it pulses, and they show him have a heart arrhythmia because of the smart meter pulse.
Jeez.
And it happens the same exact time as the pulse.
Yeah. I saw the same thing for someone driving a car. That was a German TV channel that did investigative journalists. And they had a Wi-Fi hotspot in the dash, as it is very, very common these days. And when they turned it on, they saw difference, his heart rhythm all showing a lot of stress, and also his brain waves going in a very, let's say, a stressful pattern. So it shows you, again, there's demonstrations that these EMFs are stressful, and that the difference, your body can sense it instantly. And sometimes it's below your level of awareness. For most people, it is. But it doesn't mean it's not impacting you. And we finally have Tamara that just joined the class. Thank you so much, Tamara. And this is all the time we had. Guys, thank you so much for attending this webinar. We wish we were able to stay and to answer questions. I think we could go almost all night long. We do have other responsibilities, and also the replay is going to be too big to upload. Now that I think of it, I'm going to split it. I think I'm going to split the Q&A in a different section to make it easy. If maybe you missed part of the webinar, tomorrow morning, or if you're listening to the replay, or if you want to listen to the replay because you want to re-listen to some parts you quite didn't get, or you want to study the materials, just look at your emails tomorrow morning. It's gonna be there, sending the webinar replay, and you're gonna hear about the course some more. We're gonna tell you a little bit more information about the course this week. So we do hope you join us. It would be an honor for us to be able to give you the full story on all types of electropollution. And whatever you do, I hope that you really enjoyed this presentation. It was made for you with love. And Brian, it's been tremendous as always, and I can't wait to get started in that class on November 9th. In the meantime, we're going to be in the Facebook group getting prepped and getting everyone on board. We have Judy that just joined us. Thank you so much. And I'm going to close this out, and hopefully the replay is going to save. Now I'm just thinking, okay, I'm going to click this big red button and see what happens. Thank you so much for everyone attending and who spent 2 hours with us. Brian, talk soon. Thank you so much.
All right, talk soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye.